Hey guys, so my internet cut off again, so I apologize. Normally I've never had a problem before, but of course today I'm gonna have the problem because I'm doing a live lecture. So luckily no one is viewing at this point, so this is just a recording, or this will be a recording. Anyway, just to finish out this example that I was doing of studying, a lot of times I've seen like a meme, I've seen pictures of people who will put gummy bears at each paragraph of their textbook. And every time they read a paragraph, they reward themselves with a gummy bear. And so, this idea of setting these intentions so that you can do better help us in terms of of managing our self-control. Um, so another thing that we think about, and just to mention here, I've got a really nice example of what we call the Marshmallow Experiment, this YouTube video on the link here. And what this is this idea that, it's set up where there's a child and at different ages, because we see, of course, at different ages, kids are able to do more and have more self-control. When we look at having a marshmallow and saying, okay, I'm going to give you this marshmallow. So you have a little kid sitting there at the table and say, I'm going to give you this marshmallow, and I'm going to give this one to you right now. Or if you wait 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on how old the kid is in the experiment, if you wait X amount of time, I will give you 2 marshmallows if you wait. But the problem is you've got to sit staring at the marshmallow, and you're not able to do anything. And so the idea is do the children have the ability to control themselves to sit and stare at one marshmallow, knowing that if they're good and they don't eat it, that if they wait, they will get 2 marshmallows in the end. And so, of course, some little kids just can't do that. And the video is really cute because you can see some kids, of course, they will try to cheat and nibble on it and they'll smell it. But the idea is that the more self-control you have, the younger you are, the more likely you're actually successful at life. If you have a child who is very, very well in terms of self-control, the idea is that they're already starting out at a good level, and then they can mature up as adults to be have really good self-control. But it's a really neat experiment. It's really cute, and it's in the video will give different examples. So the final thing that I want to discuss with this chapter, this idea of impression management, and that is that how is it that other people see you? And one need that one basic human need that we all have is that we want people to view ourselves in a certain light. You want to, usually you want to be known and seen as being good and kind and being a decent person. And so this idea of impression management is, how do we get others to see who we are? How do we get others to view us as we want them to view us? And there's a couple of different things that we can do. Ingratiation, of course, is flattering the person, praising them, saying, oh, you're such a wonderful person. And, usually people do this of somebody of a higher status, and they want that person to like them. So they pay them all these compliments and get them to like them. So that's one way to get somebody to have an impression of you, is to basically kiss their butt. That's what ingratiation is. Another thing that you could do is you can self-handicap yourself. So one thing that we try to strategize and manage our view of ourselves and view of other people viewing ourselves is we tend to create our own obstacles, and we'll create excuses for ourselves. So what we can do is, for example, let's say you have a really big exam, you have a final exam in a class, and you need to have a really good grade, but you do not have the confidence in yourself that you are going to do well. Well, instead of studying, you go out the night before and you get super plastered, and then you go into the exam and you're not going to do well because you partied the night before. Well, this is sort of a way for you to make an excuse for yourself. So other people are coming in and they're seeing you and they're like, wow, you did really bad. And instead of saying, well, I did really bad because I don't know the material and I'm dumb, right? Which is never a good thing to say about yourself. You say, well, I didn't do well because I didn't even bother studying because I was out all night. So you've created an obstacle for yourself and created these excuses for yourself. Oh, I didn't do well because I wasn't feeling well. Oh, I didn't do well because I didn't, X, Y, Z. And you've created this obstacle for yourself to basically safeguard what other people are going to view. And they're going to view it in a different light. Instead of seeing you as not being capable of doing well on that test, they're going to see, oh, well, that person, partied the night before and, didn't do well because of that. So you're actually self-handicapping yourself. And we do this a lot. We do this to sort of safeguard our view of ourselves and safeguard ourselves because we're afraid sometimes of success and we're afraid of doing well. So we end up handicapping ourselves. Another thing is thinking about politicians. And a lot of politicians try to manage their own images and how other people view them. And that is really important to who they are. And so, for example, John F. Kennedy was known to the public as being young. He's super healthy. He's very vigorous. He goes sailing. He plays all these sports. He's really, really healthy and in great shape. When in reality, he actually had degenerative bone disease. He had chronic back pain. He was on a lot of medication to help with pain. He a lot of times was on crutches or in wheelchairs on the side, and he wouldn't show that to the public. To the public, he wanted to be seen in a certain light. He wanted this impression of himself to be a certain way, and so he was only photographed doing certain things. And as you can see, he's sort of propped up on this yacht or ship, and he's being seen in a different light, as you can see the picture to the right, which is him on crutches, which is more specific to what to how he actually felt. So another thing that we think about is about viewing ourselves as our own self-esteem. So self-esteem is this, overall evaluation that you have of yourself. Of course, you can have a positive evaluation or a negative one. We can have, a high self-esteem, which can be, in a sense, protective, because if we have a high self-esteem of ourselves, then we can, do better. And we can feel good about ourselves. It can be motivating. There's a lot of really good functions of a high self-esteem, of course, of being fitting to your abilities. And then there's this, I'm just going to very briefly mention terror management theory. And so there's this idea that if we have a high self-esteem, it kind of helps us not think about our own demise. If we feel really good about ourselves, then we're not going to be thinking about death. And so this is just kind of a side topic. You'll see it's a little bit more of an explanation in the book about this. And this idea, this final thing I want to touch on is this idea of narcissism, which, we think about high self-esteem. And we all know that one person that has high self-esteem, probably a little too high for their abilities, and narcissism. And so narcissism is actually a personality disorder that can be diagnosed. It's called narcissistic personality disorder. And this idea that you have this self-love, but it's too much. You view yourself over everyone else, and you lack empathy towards other people. And this idea, I put this picture of Kanye on there because a lot of people say that he's very narcissistic. There's a lot of other people that we can see in the media, people that we can see out in who are famous, who are considered narcissists, who have a greater, they have a feel that they are more important than they really are, sort of thing. And there's an argument that narcissism itself, our self-esteem and how we view ourselves in this sort of very self-loving light, has actually increased in college students since the 1980s. And social media is blamed a lot on that, of kind of putting ourselves up to this really high standard, thinking that we're super important, because things like Twitter allows us to talk to people with higher status directly. That's also an argument that we think that we're more important than what we are. And the idea of social media and having thousands and thousands of friends and not having close friendships, there's an argument that that's kind of producing less empathy. from person to person. So again, these are just sort of, these ideas that some researchers have had over the course of a few decades. And of course, the reason why we talk about narcissism, the word narcissism comes from Greek mythology, Narcissus, who fell in love with his own reflection. And then he was so in love with himself that he couldn't leave his own reflection and ended up dying. So, of course, we do, I think, all know that one person who tends to be in love with themselves and doesn't really care too much about other people. So, that's just kind of this idea of, okay, if we have introspection and we think about insightful ideas about our own selves, but then we get wrapped up too much in ourselves, then we can start sounding kind of narcissistic. So, the last slide here is just a review, just so that you guys can help. This can help you with studying for the quiz and for the exam, or for the midterm. This chapter is on the midterm exam. So hopefully this helps you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them over email. If you have a really complex question, I can do a video for it. But just let me know. But I am available on email. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the videos. Again, I'm sorry that they are split into 3, but unfortunately, my internet decided not to cooperate today. But normally I don't have an issue with these videos. So until next time, have a great rest of your weekend, and I will virtually see you guys later.